Hi, I'm going to start off before we get into the bird here in our Raspberry Bordeaux. I'm going to show you what I did to make a dabber because they're really hard to find now. I wanted to take an eraser and I take it on a very fine sandpaper and I just go all the way around and take the edges off. So I'm ended left with a little, not pointed, but it's rounded at the end. So you can do this on an emery board as well, and that's how I'm going to make the dabber that we're going to make our berries with. So the first thing we're going to start off with is I'm going to base coat the white section, which is going to be our belly. Now this one, rather than do it in a glass like I originally did, I'm going to do it on something flat that's easier for the camera to see. So I picked up this little platter at our local grocery store, and I'm going to apply it on that. This way it's easier for you to see with the camera. So I'm going to apply base coat the white sections. I'm using my glass brushes, which when you're using glass brushes, they work so well. They transfer, they paint, pardon me, very soft. They don't tend to pull the paint back on. They do apply the paint for you. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply a coat of black. Now the black covers quite nicely, but it's still, I still find it's better to go ahead and put a coat on ahead of time. The only thing about applying a coat is you have to make sure that it's good and dry before you go on to your next step. So we always have a few things we can do in the meantime. So I'm using my round there, and I'm going to switch to my flat. I've got a 1/8 flat here, and that'll cover this a lot faster. I'm on a platter that has a little bit of ridges here, so it'll work out just fine. But okay, so we've got a coat on there. So what I'm going to do now, in the meantime, I'm going to take my liner and I'm going to put my branches in. So we're using our dark chocolate, and I'm just going to apply the branches. Now for this piece, I moved these flowers are up here on the glass, but I moved them down along the bottom for this piece. I'm going to mix a little bit of black into the dark chocolate, just where and apply it where they're coming from underneath something, just to darken it a bit. And that's my branches. So I'm going to, if I'm working on glasses, I would put this coat on each one of my glasses and apply this to it. So I will allow this to dry and we'll be back. Okay, so I'm going to start back to my bird by taking my little round and applying. My bird's nice and dry. I've allowed this to set up good. And we are going to apply the white. Now I could wait on that white on his cheek patch. I'm going to take my liner and I'm going to pick up my antique gold, and I'll pull a little antique gold into the wet white up at the top of his chest. Now clean that off. I'll use white with my liner to blend that in. So we're getting a little of that gold tone, and we just streak that down his chest. Once we've got the blend how we'd like it, I'm going to pick up a little bit of, I'm mixing white and black to make a gray. I'm going to pick up a bit of gray mix with my liner and my antique gold and just kind of brush mix those to get a nice dark shadowy type tone in there. And I'll just let that streak down there a little bit. We want all of that to be able to just blend away. So we want that to fade off into the belly so that you're not going to see where it particularly ends. I'm going to take my gray with my liner again, and I'm going to come from the bottom upwards, clean my liner. Every time I clean it, I dry it off in my toweling. And I'm going to take white and I'm going to blend back and forth. Now remember that gray we made. We mixed black and white to make a gray. They used to have a gray, DecoArt used to have a gray called slate. So if you have the slate gray still, yeah, that's what we can use. But if not, we make it. So I just want those to fade. You want to see the little feathery strokes. That's why we're using a liner for this. And I just want to blend white and gray. We just don't want to have a big belly patch in the center where it's all pure white. I think I'm going to take a little more of that golden gray mix and just pull a little more down there. Just fading it in. No two chickadees have the same look, so don't worry if your glasses, each chickadee has a different amount of color in their belly. That's just fine. Now I'm going to use my liner to reapply white. I should have just left that white alone for now. So I'm going to apply that. Pick up my gray again, and I'm going to come from the front of his cheek patch. I think that cheek patch could be a little further up. So again, it's white and gray, faded out. So I wipe my brush, pick up more white. Come from the back. Streak it inwards. Nice and soft. We want to end up having a slightly dirty cheek patch. And you can just kind of pull a few little tiny fine lines off the edge so that they pull off, so the cheek patch is not base coated solid at the edge. All right. So I'm going to take and I'm going to wet coat his beak. Now I've gone a little off the beak there, made it a little messy. Later on I'll clean that up with a little, I use a little scraper knife, but you can use a thumbtack, you can use anything. So I'm taking I wet coat that beak, and I'm taking a little of my gray mix. I don't want too much. And I just streak my beak. Bring a little black back to separate the beak. Darker at the bottom. And I'll just bring a few little tiny black markings down onto the chest there. All right. I'm going to apply some black on my tail. And I've got my round, and I'm just flattening my round to a chisel. Flattens up nicely. These glass brushes flatten very nicely. Picking up, when I pick up gray, and I'm just going to slide some feather marks. Now this is bumpy, so it does make it a little bit difficult. So I'm just going to pull along here. And I'll back and forth between with my black and gray. And of course, this bumpy has created a little issue here for me. I'm just going to take a little piece of paper towel and come along my grooves. This is where a lot of people use those best friend Q-tips. Moisten a Q-tip and go in there. And again, we can scrape everything off after if we'd like. Now the rest of his back, I've got my 1/8, pardon me, flat. So I'll rebase his back and the wing, bring it a little off the edge of the tail, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of the gray, flatten my brush so it's like a double load. And then I'll just, again, slide along the top, give them the little feathery marks. And I'll go in with my liner afterwards and add some very defined lines. But these are just the little bit bigger ones. I'll also pick, now I take and I'm going to sharpen this up with a little bit of white. I just side load into a bit of white. Not wanting too much. I don't want to pull along all of the feathers. Off the edge a little on some, really adds to it. And it just depends how much, and there's not too much there, so I can just kind of streak a little bit of gray along the top of his head, just to give a little bit of detail. Now we have his eye. I want his eye to be up halfway into the white and halfway into the black. Now the part that's up in the black you don't end up seeing, so I take my liner and I take a little of my gray and I outline the top part. So now that's like a highlight along the top, and I'll just put a little tiny comma highlight over there. I might go for a little lighter gray. I don't want it too bright. Whoops, and that's too far forward. See how that makes him look like he's got cataracts? So I'm going to put that back further. There we go. And the way to get rid of the one I put in the front, I just take black, cover that back over. And I always push back until I have the size of highlight I like. That looks good to me. And again, I'll clean this all up afterwards with my little scratchy tool. I think I still could go for a few more lines on his chest coming down. And I'll bring a few black lines. How we brought white. I'll bring a few black. I'll take a couple of gray lines now with the liner. And I'll do a few defined lines. A little in the white as well. Just a little for more highlight. And even a, woo! That red's not supposed to be there. I picked up a little red accidentally as I went by. So I'll just blot that off. I was picking up black and I dragged through the red on my palette. And I'm just defining a few of my wing feathers with this fine lines of black. I don't want him to look like he's haggard by any means, but so I'll go ahead and I'll continue the same thing on all of the birds.